Now we're on something called What's Happening Now. Internally, we call this area of Trenspider data flow. And this is a way for you to watch the events occurring in the market in real time as data becomes available. And you can build your own, just like in market maps, or you can use one of the pre-made ones that we have here. And you can have more than one of these open at one time. If I click on that, it's going to give me an instant list that's updated as soon as the SEC filings are published. We have a machine learning bot that actually reads the filings. And this will pull out any corporate CEOs, presidents that are buying their own shares in their own companies. And this is one of my personal favorite things to look at. When looking for ideas, because there's a million reasons why an executive would sell shares in his company. Maybe he's going on an expensive trip. Maybe he's buying a new mansion, his 10th mansion. Right? Who knows, right? He might be, in the market for a new fleet of Lamborghinis. Maybe he's Mark Zuckerberg and he's secretly the world's biggest doomsday prepper. Right. Who knows? But there's only really one reason why an executive would buy their own shares, because they think it's going to become more valuable in the future. Before I dive in, I just want to take one moment and just show one slide, if that's okay, because I think it's important to kind of get this idea across. Trenspider is one of the very few truly comprehensive institutional grade products available to retail traders. It's a level of technology that is typically reserved for institutions. And this is what life looks like for most retail traders. You're going to need to use a lot of different tools, and that's expensive in cost, but it's also expensive in time and differences between how they work. The universe of most traders, this is their life, right? Bouncing between different systems, right? Going from trade ideas to trends or to TradingView to stockcharts.com, just going back and forth, trying to make sense of the market with a million different tools. We just hate that. Right, that's what inspired Trenspider to be built in the first place, was this idea that you should only have one tool, because it's the only way that the markets can be fair. JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley, they have Bloomberg. They have one tool, right, that does everything they need for it, but it costs $30,000 a year. And we didn't think it was right that retail traders were stuck with ad hoc hodgepodge of different products, bouncing between tabs, spending a lot of time and money learning different tools, when institutions just log into one thing and it's all there, right? But it's so expensive, nobody outside of institutions can use it. So I'm going to start with some of the more high-level basic ones. And we're going to start with a feature that we call stock market mapping. So what is a stock market map? It's a visualization that lets you look at a market or an index or a watch list using several different vectors that you can define. We can look at the change since last close last week and overnight to kind of help generate this map. Yeah. So when I click apply here, it will regenerate the map and give us a view of the S&P 500 in a tile structure, where we can see which symbols here are showing the strongest movements right now. Really great thing about Trenspider's market maps, you can make them your own. You can run them on any watch list. You can use any vectors for size and color and all that you might dream of. So there's also, I could spend a lot more time in here. I'm going to switch though, just to a different type of market map that we have that's called a custom bubble chart. And this works exactly the same, except you have some additional vectors here that you can look at, right? So we can say, like, let's make the bubble size change since last close. And then we can have the horizontal axis be the 7-day change percent and the vertical axis be the 30-day change percent. So now we can kind of generate a map where we can see what symbols have 3 different vectors that are interesting to us. And as you hover over these, they'll tell you what they are and all the details about them. Find something interesting here. This is yet another way to filter the market and look at it in a different way. This is a widget that I use when I'm looking for opportunities all the time, and it's called seasonality. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's the seasonal performance of an asset over a defined period of time. And you can see, like, September is by far the worst time to own Apple. Don't hold Apple through September, because it only closes higher than August 33% of the time. July is the best time to hold Apple, right? I know it's June still, but if you want to wait till the end of July or June and buy some Apple shares, there's a 77% chance that it will close higher in July than it did in June, right? You can look at seasonality by week, right? You can see that next week is one of the worst weeks of the year for Apple. Out of the last 19 years, Apple has only closed higher than the previous week 26% of the time next week, right? The only week worse than that is the very last week of the year. You can also dice this by day of week, right? And you can also dice this by hour of day. If you're going to look at it by hour of day, I definitely suggest looking at a shorter amount of data.
That's an amazing tool, Dan. So many. We've been in the game for a long time, right? And so many years I went over charts, analyzed them myself, tried to get as much information as I can, but I did it all manually, right? Putting it in Excel sheets and stuff like that. And here you're showing me, that's the data. On July, you want to buy Apple at the end of June. Simple as that, right?
Yeah.
That's incredible. And also when you know that July is a strong month for Apple, for example, you can definitely take that to day trading, and right, because most days will end up on the winner side, so you can play those moves. So
you can actually see it, right? Like if you want to look at day of week, right, since last month, so you're looking at about 30 days, right, a month. You can see that Tuesday, 100% of the last 30 Tuesdays, or the last month's Tuesdays, the last 4 or 5 Tuesdays, have closed higher than Monday. 100%. Right. You can go, okay, that's cool, but I wonder how it looks if I go back yet another month. Well, 67% of Tuesdays closed higher than Monday, right, over the last 2 months. And what's really neat about this, because like I feel your pain. The reason this feature exists is I used to do this by hand too, right? And I think a lot of traders, a lot of retail traders do stuff like that because they don't have the tools to do it, right? But what's really neat about this is in addition to being able to look at the seasonality, you can also see the raw data, right? Each dot is one, there's 43 dots per column, 1 per month for 43 years. You can see how the outliers look, right? Like the greatest performance in June ever that Apple has had was 25% up, right? The worst performance was down here, right? Negative 30%. You can also say, okay, cool, Dan, but that might include like horrible times like 2008, 2012, 2020. Well, you can also exclude that from the data. So you can say, hey, how does seasonality look without 2008, 2012, and 2020 in it? You can also do fun stuff like with this too, like filter out all non-election years and see how a particular stock performs only during election years. So there's a lot of flexibility built into seasonality. And as you're flipping through ideas and opportunities, having seasonality open on your screen will help you get some context about it. On the sidebar as well, there's this box called Insiders. I'm going to show you this on Meta and Asana. So you can see 2 completely different stories. So this is all the corporate executives at the company and what they're doing with their shares. And let's go down to Mark Zuckerberg, right? And we can see that all this guy does is sell 15 million bucks a share a day. We are his exit liquidity. Everybody in the market is. He wakes up in the morning and he sells $15 to $40 million of Facebook every single day. And like I mentioned, there's a million reasons why he might be doing that. Maybe he needs to build yet another underground bunker. You never know. But what I like to look for here is insider buying. And Asana is a great example of a CEO, Mark Zuckerberg's former partner, Dustin Moskovitz, who's doing the exact opposite. He is buying his company's shares. And he stopped in November, but he starts up and stops periodically. And when he does, he's buying $2, $3, $4, $5 million worth of shares a day, right? He's just out there just pushing buy, mashing that buy button, probably market buys.
Probably the cat is doing that.
Smacking his keyboard. But these 2 tools are really useful in my view. Seasonality and insider trades. I like to look at them a lot. I also want to show you unusual options flow. If you're an options trader or an equity trader, being aware of what unusually aggressive or large options trades are occurring on the chain can help inform your decision making. This is a way to look at that in a very interesting way, 2 ways actually. And I want to point out, you can filter this. So you can say, I'm a short-term trader, so I only care about strike or expiry dates that are in the next, 6 months or whatever. So you might filter this down. And you may want to say, okay, and I only care about large trades, right? Where at least $100,000 was spent on the premium for the options contract. And then you can look at a scatter plot chart of those options trades. This is what's happening within the chain itself. And if you hover your mouse over these, it'll tell you about that trade. You can also switch it to look at it on a balance basis. So this is calls to puts balance. And you can see on Apple, there's almost no unusually large puts, right? Like this is probably someone hedging, right? There's 600K in puts for a January 2025 leap puts expiry date. but they're also not that far off from the current price, right? They're like 175 versus the 190 or whatever it's trading at now. So if you believe options are important, and I definitely do, I think options are fundamentally one of the things driving the market in the background because of gamma hedging and all the things that market makers have to do when they sell an options contract. This is a great way to see what's going on the chain with all the noise filtered out, right? Because all the small 100, single contract, 5 contract option trades are removed, right? And it only shows you the stuff that smart money, big money is putting out there.
As you can imagine, as you can see, guys, there are tons of ways to prepare yourself to trading. And with Trenspider, you have the opportunity to decide where do you want to take it, right? Your approach to it. So that's the concept. Just bring your own way, your own thinking to it, and then you can execute it through this platform, for example.
That's exactly the case. That's straight on, right? Trenspider is meant to be flexible. So it's meant to fit any style of trading.